Welcome, and thank you for joining this online training module on addressing gender equality in biodiversity action in Thailand. My name is Laura Cooper Hall, and I'm pleased to be part of this program, which has been developed by UNDP Thailand and Thailand's Office of Natural Resources and Environmental Planning and Policy and Planning, ONA. This training is designed for government staff and partner agencies involved in biodiversity implementation in Thailand. You don't need a background in gender to get something from this module. It has been designed specifically for people who are experts in biodiversity, not in gender. The goal is to show how gender considerations are part of effective, equitable biodiversity work and what that means in practice. This training is divided into 3 parts, each recorded separately. Part 1, which you're watching now, covers foundational gender concepts and why they matter. Part 2 covers the international policy context, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and how gender is embedded in these global commitments. Part 3 looks at what the evidence tells us about gender and biodiversity, specifically in Thailand. I'd encourage you to watch the 3 parts in order. Each one builds on the previous. Let's begin. Part 1, Gender Concepts and Why They Matter, Building a Shared Foundation. Before we get into definitions, I want to invite you to think about your own context for a moment. Think about the communities or ecosystems you work with in your role. Who collects firewood or water? Who attends meetings when a protected area committee is convened? Who speaks at those meetings? And whose voices carry weight? Who holds the formal positions and who is consistently absent? These are not abstract questions. They reflect patterns that directly shape the effectiveness of everything we do in biodiversity conservation. If a program or policy is designed without asking who it actually reaches, who it benefits, and whether it changes anything for the people most affected, it will almost certainly miss something important. That's what a gender-responsive approach does. It asks these questions systematically, builds them into how we design and deliver our work, and helps us reach better outcomes as a result. So let's start with the most foundational distinction. What is the difference between sex and gender? Sex refers to biological characteristics, chromosomes, hormones, anatomy, that are typically assigned at birth. These are physical realities, and importantly, they can vary. Some people are born with intersex characteristics, and sex characteristics can change through medical transition. So even sex is not as binary as we sometimes assume. Gender, on the other hand, is socially constructed. It's the set of rules, roles, and expected behaviors that society associates with being a man, a woman, or a gender-diverse person. These are not biological facts, they're social norms. Crucially, they differ across cultures, they change over time, and they intersect with other aspects of identity like age, ethnicity, and religion. A few important clarifications. Gender is not the same as being a woman. It's not the same as sex. And it's not the same as gender identity. Understanding these distinctions matters because conflating them leads to programs that focus only on women or that treat gender as a fixed biological category. And both of those approaches miss the point. Let's look at this through some examples. Take a moment to scan the statements on the screen and consider for each one, is it describing a biological reality or a social norm? Women are responsible for raising children because they can breastfeed. This is gender. While breastfeeding is biological, the assignment of childcare responsibility to women is a social norm. Many societies assign it regardless of whether a woman breastfeeds. Women are delicate, men are rational. This is entirely gender, a stereotype with no biological basis, reinforced through socialization over time. In meetings, men are confident to voice their opinions. Gender again, shaped by power dynamics and social conditioning, not by anything biological. Smoke and air pollution may affect pregnant people more. This one is sex. It's a biological difference related to pregnancy. It is better to have men as leaders. Gender. A social norm that varies enormously across cultures and is absolutely subject to change. Why does this exercise matter? Because when we mistake social norms for biological facts, we treat inequality as natural and inevitable, when in fact it's constructed and it can be changed. This brings us to another foundational distinction for gender-responsive work: equality versus equity. Equality means everyone receives the same support, the same resources, the same treatment, regardless of their starting point or the barriers they face. On the surface, this sounds fair, but in practice, treating everyone identically when they face very different circumstances can actually reinforce inequality. If you give everyone the same tool, but some people face structural barriers to using it, you have not solved the problem, you've just made it invisible. Equity means giving people what they need to reach a comparable outcome. Those who face greater barriers receive more targeted support. This is the principle behind gender-responsive implementation and behind the most effective biodiversity programs. Let me make this more concrete. On screen, you can see 4 examples, each comparing an equality approach with an equity approach. Training access. An equality approach offers the same number of seats to women and men. But if women have less free time because of unpaid care responsibilities, many won't be able to attend. An equity approach reserves places for women and provides childcare and travel support so they can actually participate. Governance meetings. Inviting equal numbers sounds fair, but if the meeting is held at night and women face mobility and safety barriers, equal invitations don't produce equal participation. Changing the time, providing safe transport, and actively supporting women's speaking roles is the equity approach. Cash incentives. The same amount per household sounds equal, but if women-led households have less access to land, tools, and credit, the same starting point doesn't produce the same outcome. Targeted startup support for women-led groups addresses that gap. Early warning systems. The same SMS message to everyone works if everyone has a phone. But if many women don't own or control one, you need multiple channels, community radio, women's groups, to ensure the message actually reaches them. These are not hypothetical. They're the kinds of design choices that determine whether biodiversity programs actually work for everyone or just for some. One of the reasons equity-based approaches matter so much in biodiversity contexts is something known as triple burden, the expectation, common across many societies, that women perform the 3 types of work simultaneously. Reproductive work covers care and maintenance of the household. Cooking, childcare, caring for elderly relatives, collecting water and fuel. Productive work covers income and subsistence activities, farming, fishing, gathering forest products, paid employment. And community work, which is often entirely invisible, covers the social and cultural labor of community life, ceremonies, collective labor, community organizing, and unpaid care for community members. Many women carry all three of these simultaneously every day. And when we design a biodiversity consultation, a training, or a field survey without accounting for this reality, we're asking women to add something else to a schedule that is already full, with obligations that are not optional. The result is low participation, not because women aren't interested or engaged, but because the program wasn't designed with their lives in mind. These norms have real, concrete consequences for biodiversity governance. Let me walk through them. Time poverty. Women generally have less discretionary time, which limits their availability for training, meetings, and conservation activities scheduled during standard working hours or in addition to their existing workload. Constrained mobility. Safety concerns, social norms, and transport barriers limit where and when women can travel, especially in rural areas and especially after dark. Less access to and control over resources. Land titles, credit, equipment, and formal certification are frequently less accessible to women, which affects their ability to benefit from conservation programs and biodiversity-based livelihood schemes. Limited participation in decision-making. Women's voices are often marginalized at both household and community levels, meaning the people most affected by biodiversity loss frequently have the least influence over the decisions made about it. And I want to be explicit about one more thing. This is not only a women's issue. Rigid gender norms harm men and gender diverse people too. Men who don't fit expected norms, who want to take on care roles, or who face pressure not to seek support, are also constrained by this system. Gender-responsive work is about addressing the system, not just targeting women as the problem to be fixed. Now, gender does not operate alone. It intersects with other aspects of identity: age, disability, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation and gender identity, economic status, education level, and geographic location, among others. These overlapping identities create unique experiences, not simply additive, but compounded. An elderly woman from an ethnic group living in a remote forested area faces a very different set of barriers to biodiversity participation than a young urban woman with formal education. Both face gender barriers, but the nature of those barriers is completely different. This matters enormously for biodiversity work in Thailand, where there are significant differences across ethnic groups, regions, and levels of formal recognition of land and resource rights. A gender-responsive approach that doesn't account for intersectionality will still miss people, often the people who are already most marginalized. So how do we move from recognizing these issues to actually doing something about them? The gender integration continuum gives us a way to assess whether a program or policy currently sits and where it could go. At one end is gender unaware. Gender simply is not considered. No analysis of who is affected, who participates, or whose needs are being met. Next is gender accommodating. Gender differences are acknowledged, but the approach works around them rather than addressing the underlying inequality. The nighttime meeting example we discussed earlier about inviting women but not changing the time is a good illustration of this level. Gender responsive means intentionally addressing the specific needs, roles, and experiences of women, men, and gender diverse people. It actively reduces barriers and improves both access and outcomes. And gender transformative, the highest level, actively challenges the norms, structures, and power dynamics that produce inequality in the first place. Women don't just attend meetings, they lead them. Gender isn't just counted in statistics, it's analyzed and addressed structurally. The goal is to move toward the transformative end, not necessarily all at once, but consistently and deliberately over time. A complementary framework is Reach, Benefit, Transform, which helps us evaluate how deeply gender is integrated into any specific activity. Does it reach women? This is the most basic level. Are women present? Are they included? This is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Does it benefit women? Do women gain something tangible, skills, income, recognition, decision-making power? Many programs reach women without actually changing anything for them. Does it transform gender relations? This is the highest level. Do women hold formal leadership? Do institutional norms around women's authority shift? Does the activity change the underlying dynamics, not just the surface outcomes? As you think about your own work, ask yourself, which level does it currently operate at? And what would moving up one level look like in practice? That's a practical and achievable question. You don't need to jump straight to transformative. Before we close part one, I want to leave you with a few reflection questions. Think of a specific program or activity you're currently involved in. Where does it sit on the gender integration continuum? Is it gender unaware, accommodating, responsive, or is it moving toward transformative? Does it reach women? Does it benefit them? Does it transform anything? And what would it take to move it one level further along the continuum? It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. Sometimes it's a change in when the meeting is scheduled, or adding sex disaggregated data field to a data collection form, or creating a space for women to speak before a broader discussion is opened. Take a moment with these questions. Part two will be ready when you are. Thank you for completing part one. When you're ready, please move on to part two, which covers the international policy context, the global biodiversity framework, and how gender is formally embedded in Thailand's commitments under the Convention on Biological Diversity.